Sonic Mania, a return to the pixelated 2D style of the original games and the highest rated Sonic game in 15 years. Hello and welcome to the cut content of, the show where we try to find content that you aren't able to see in some amazing games. This time we're looking into the files of Sonic Mania and trying to find the stuff that didn't make the final cut. So let's get started with some unused models. Sonic's model from Sonic Jam has been left in the files. This was either going to be used instead of an original model, or was just a placeholder until the final one was completed. There's also a model called Monarch BG, which is a 3D model version of the mech in the background of Titanic Monarch Zone. This was flattened and turned into a 2D image, possibly to save on processing power. Here's some cut enemies. In Chemical Plant Zone, there's an unused enemy called Sweep, which looks like one of the enemies from Sonic CD and the similarly named enemy from Sonic Adventure. Green Hill Zone contains the original version of Splat, a cut enemy from the original Sonic the Hedgehog. 4 debugging tools were left in the final game, which are a collision viewer, which allows you to see the solid terrain that's only solid from the top, and terrain that's only solid from the bottom and sides. A camera movement mode, letting the player move the camera freely around the stage. A level select screen, which enables a debug mode, allowing you to place objects in the level. And a developer menu containing loads of interesting features, such as a stage select, which even lets you go to press demo versions of levels, and extra video settings. There are 4 bonus stages which aren't in the final game. They're called Scene Test 3, Scene Test 7, Scene Test 8, and Scene 33. The 3 Scene Test stages are probably what the name says they are, but Scene 33 is interesting as there are only 32 bonus stages. The chemical pools in Chemical Plant Zone Act 2 have different colours in their file names. The green pools use chem-red.wav and the cyan ones use chem-yellow.wav, possibly suggesting that they were a different colour earlier in development. Other weird names include Heavy Magician is called Heavy Mystic in the game files. The version during the boss of Titanic Monarch Zone Act 2 is called PHANTOMMYSTIC. Tuesday is the name for the electrical conduits in Flying Battery Zone Act 2, strangely. And Press Garden Zone is referred to as Pulp Solstice in the music and sprite files, showing that Pulp Solstice Zone was likely an early name for the zone. There's a cut Easter egg based around the YouTuber video game Donkey, activated by grabbing a chain in Hydro City Zone Act 1 and pressing left, 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 right, 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 up, up, up. After activating the Easter egg, using a speed booster would play a sound clip of Donkey. This was removed in an update, but was left in the Nintendo Switch version of the game. There are heaps of unused sprites left in from earlier in development. They include a version of the logo which says Discovery instead of Mania, which was the original name for the project. Early versions of the sprites for the title screen animation, which misses some of the shading. Sprites for the end screens of demos. Loads of early menu elements, of which these are only just a small portion. These letters are unused as they aren't in any of the zone names. An early version of the pause menu, sometimes seen in early footage. Some sprites for an Act 3 of the stage. Old graphics for the Insta Shield and the Elemental Shields. The Sonic 3 sprites for the shields with slightly more detail. Some text saying perfect and speed, possibly for the bonus stages. Cut animations for Sonic and Tails looking up while piloting the tornado. Sprites for Mini Tails holding Mini Sonic, but there aren't any for Mini Sonic hanging. The first letter of each character's name is next to their signpost sprites. Debug graphics, likely intended for debug mode. Text saying time to escape and hyper are in the files for the special stage. Green Hill Zone's files include sprites for a totem pole, which were also unused in Sonic 1. Chemical Plant Zone's files have an animation for Tails entering the zone and some sprites from the Sonic 2 2013 remake. Studiopolis Zone contains an intact version of the blue missiles, a TV screen and a boss similar to Gapsule from Sonic and Knuckles. Flying Battery Zone has a slightly different animation for the Big Squeeze mini-boss and an animated version of the busted chopper heads. Press Garden Zone's files have an early version of Jugglesaw with no googly eyes, a completely different looking version of Woodrow, a completely different looking version of Woodrow, green versions of the silver, blue and copper crates, a pile of newspapers, larger versions of the jars that the Splats enemies come from, and animated versions of the player looking around while frozen. Stardust Speedway Zone has got sprites for a spiked crusher, spinning signposts from Sonic CD, and some comedy and tragedy masks. Hydro City Zone only has some unused versions of the hook sprites. Mirage Saloon Zone has an early version of the pinatas and flashing animations for the Cacti Nords. Oil Ocean Zones files contain a small version of the lift platforms, a gold version of the silver switches from Act 2, and a horizontal version of the booster objects, which are also unused in Sonic 2. Lava Reef Zone has a giant chain link, some icons for a stage editor, early versions of the fireballs, a foreground layer for embers, and some spiked platforms on conveyor belts. Metallic Madness Zone's files have only got a spinning version of the cylinders. Egg Reverie Zone has some unused environment elements. Scrap Brain Zone has got a bunch of leftover sprites from Sonic 1, Hidden Palace Zone has got some sprites left over from Sonic 2, and finally, DA Gardens files include some sprites including some buttons and screens. Studiopolis Zone's files include an unused Love Tester object. Jumping in would display a character on the monitor. In pre-release demos, Sonic would jump off screen saying "I'm outta here" if the game was left doing nothing for too long. This was a reference to Sonic CD, but didn't make it into the final game, but can still be accessed by changing the RAM memory. There are 13 cut sound effects, which are and there are also 3 early versions of used sound effects which have been left in the files. Is an early version of and is an early version of. Also, there is one unused audio track known as Egg Reverie Pinch Mode, meaning it was possibly used early on in development when you would be running out of rings or almost have defeated the boss in Egg Reverie Zone. Here is a clip of it. 4 unused strings exist in every language pack for the game, but aren't translated. They are a test string, which reads test string, a string for unfinished elements, saying this feature is not yet implemented. Some text possibly for submitting time attack scores prior to the servers being up. And a string saying "by the Mania, for the Mania," which was Takashi Iizuka's reason for the name being changed from Discovery to Mania. An early screenshot of what looks to be Press Garden Zone Act 1 was shown in a poster before the game released. It looks much different to anything from the final game, but could be from when the zone was known as Pulp Solstice Zone. Studiopolis Zone Act 2 also changed a lot during development, with a different background and less colours in early versions. Thank you for watching this episode of the cut content of. You can support the show by sharing the video with someone who might be interested, subscribing, pledging some money to our Patreon, turning on notifications, or just watching some of our other videos. If you'd like to, you can leave a suggestion for a future episode in the comment section below. But that's it for this episode. Bye!